everyone. We have Charlotte Hope in the building. Yes! Thank you so much, Charlotte. Thanks for coming on. This is absolutely amazing. Yeah, so Charlotte and myself, we worked at the Spanish Princess, and it was really fun. And now the girls from the Hack team are going to come on and interview Charlotte, which is great. And then we've got some classes coming up that I could maybe suggest you look at on the website. And we've got actual classes in London happening, which is fabulous, in January. So I'd maybe go online and check that out as well. I think that is about it, really. So yeah, that's about it. So I think I have said everything. Yes, I'm gonna hand it over.
Thank you. Hi everyone. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you so much, Charlotte, for doing this with us. So I know we don't have a great deal of time, so we're going to jump straight in with it. These are mainly focused on being a female lead in the industry, because obviously it's quite rare for a female to completely carry the show in the way that you do. And I guess the whole group of Amazon productions with the White Queen and everything is all very similar in a really strong female lead. So we're going to dive straight into that, if that's okay. So first of all, we were just thinking of, how do you handle the responsibility of being a lead in a female-led show, but for 6 months of the year? I mean, that's quite a massive time to be filming. That's quite a lot of weight on your shoulders. Did you have to mentally prepare for that? Is there something you have to think about really, really hard before you undertake, or are you just a case of like, great role, let's do it?
I think it really, really varied. I've done 3 now. So I did the first series of Spanish Princess, second series of Spanish Princess, and then I did a movie over the summer that I was also the lead of, and all of them were really different. The first one, I got cast a week before we started filming. So to be honest, I was so panicked, and it was just like total fear, do as much as I possibly could, as quickly as I possibly could. And also, I guess, to the first one, to be honest, I got cast in Spanish Princess, and it was the first BBC regular role that I'd done, let alone leading. Kind of luckily, I think, by having been cast quite late, I didn't have a chance to overthink it too much. Like, the only thing I could really think of was just, what have I got coming up this week? What are the scenes that I've got coming up this week? Let me break those down. Let me work on the like the story as a whole. But I couldn't really think much further, and I was really glad I didn't have to think much further than like, am I gonna can I carry this show? Am I gonna be interesting enough to watch for 8 hours? I just tried not to think about
That's quite a baptism of fire then. But I guess, like you said, it's good that you couldn't overthink, because God, you could talk yourself out of it, couldn't you, if you really think about all the pressure you could be under?
Always, like, that's always what I do. Like, I always forget, like, in the periods where I'm not working, I always think this is the most impossible thing. Like, the not knowing what job I'm going to have is the worst anxiety, and it really is. And then I get back to working, and then I'm like, oh fuck, I'm shit. I think I'm shit. I was shit today. And then I'm like, no, this is way worse than just not having anything to do. Now I've got bad stuff that I've done as well, and I've got to compute all of that. But to be honest, like, do you know what I mean? Like,
you're the harshest critic, and thank you for dropping the first F-bomb. That means I can too.
but like, so to be honest, I couldn't really think past that, and I didn't worry too much about it in the grand scheme of things. But then when I came to the second season, that I had some prep time for. Like, I knew that was coming up. I knew, and I had looked back kind of analytically at the first season, and there were questions about, like, okay, so what is it? It's not just like, let's make this scene today be the best. You've also got to tell a story and progress a character and make sure that she learns something, and that like she's changed by the experience. And those are things, I think sometimes when you come in a supporting part, you just get to come in and dazzle. Here's all my magic and sparkle, and then I'm going to go home.
Yeah.
And when you're in it, when the audience is going to have to watch you for that long, you can't just do the sparkly tricks. Yeah. You have to also, like, put in all of the stuff, like all of the kind of the boring bits that mean that the sparkly bits pay off. And you have to make sure that, like, if you have to track that, if an experience is going to be traumatic, that make sure that you're not crying for 3 episodes, because I don't want to watch someone be pathetic. I might want to watch them for a bit and then watch them fight and then grow and then get broken again.
Yeah.
But like, especially with the second season of Spanish Princess, was a story really about the breakdown of a character. But I had to really make sure that it wasn't just a demise into misery, that I had kind of measured it out differently.
Absolutely, because the audience get desensitized to that after a while, don't they? They see that emotion over and over again. You have to put those layers in to make it more interesting and to keep people empathizing with you. Otherwise, they're just like, nah, switch off.
But also, like, people are complicated and weird,
Yeah.
and like, we really never. I don't think I've ever got to show really how much of a mess I am as a person in a character. So like, I do know that you've got to have as many tools as you can possibly have so that you, because that's what people are, like, we're like weird messes. I talk a lot, so please tell me when I'm talking too much.
We love it. Less work for us to do.
Well, that kind of actually leads me into my question that I had is, at least for the state side, I feel like we learn about Catherine of Aragon as kind of just being Henry's first wife. She gets pushed aside, and that's really what we know, kind of like a dud in the rug, and she's moved over. But you brought such a 3D character to her. You brought this passion, and you showed like her in her youth and how much depth that was, and the fact that they were married for 24 years, not just like a year and moved on, you know. And I know you said you only had a week, but how did you kind of embody that and say, I'm really going to take this scene and let people know this side that for me personally, have never seen before?
I mean, I think, to be honest, a lot of that character really was in the story and in the writing. Like, I'd love to think that I came in and really did something amazing with her, but actually, like, the retelling of Catherine's story was in itself much more fiery and passionate and flawed, and so that was a kind of real gift for me as an actor. But I mean, to be honest, in terms of prep, like, I'm very dyslexic and I'm very, very, very slow at prep. I'm the kind of actor that I really need to have scenes learnt 1 month to 6 weeks in advance. In my ideal working scenario, like, I've never been able to learn off the fly and go in and learn and do a scene in the morning that I learned the night before. I know how I work. I learn really orally. Like, I learned that about 5 years into my career. I was watching everyone else just like reading sides and being able to do it the next day, and I was like, I can't do that. I can only do it if I hear it. So when I got Spanish Princess for the first one, obviously I was panicking because I knew I needed to get the stuff learned pretty quick if I had any hope of getting the words out on the day. So I found, actually, amazingly, and actually, to be honest, I'm sure this community kind of will serve you in this sense, but I found a couple of drama school grads and I paid them 20 quid an hour to run lines with me. And in exchange, I tried to help out in any way that I could with any kind of industry insight, of which I think I probably have very little, but I was trying my best. But we just sat and drilled lines, and I still work with like quite a few of those actors, and it just means that I'm constantly practicing with another actor, and so I'm not just learning lines on my own and making sure that I've got my part prepped and I've made my choices. It's like really important to me that I've got all of the prep done, and then I've got a chance to play with someone. And obviously not everyone has the luxury of being able to hire someone to help you, but I do think if you can find any kind of study buddy to help you prep something, it can really open you up. And I mean, to be honest, I've done it the whole time, and usually I just like found a friend and we would be partners and we would just help each other on our lines and prep things together. And then once Spanish Princess was just a bit of a big undertaking to let one of my friends be like, can you help me learn this whole series and I'll give you cake. So I did it a bit more meticulously, but it was mostly I think sometimes prep can be a bit of a dirty word, and that people think that if you're innately talented, you don't need to spend loads of time studying it. And I'm a big geek and I love studying, so I'm probably a bit prone to it. But I I do know that like when you're leading particular, it's as much a stamina job as it is anything else, and you're going to get to the end of the day and you have to shoot a 3-page scene in 40 minutes, and if you don't know the lines back to front and inside out, and you're really fucking tired because you've been working like 6-day weeks and it's Thursday night and you're exhausted, like doesn't matter how talented you are, like you're not getting through the scene. So I think that's the most important thing, is just to have done as much, because also you shoot so fast. I mean, Mark, you'll know this, but like the way that I always think when I started acting, I thought I would like come to set and we'd play and try things out, and it would be raw and real and messy. And actually, like, so many times I've come to set and it's like, okay, we've got 2 takes on the wide, 2 takes on the close up. I just need you to go pff, 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 and that's your job today. And then there are other days where you get to explore a bit more, but when that is your job, you have to be able to do it, because that's what you've been hired for, is those moments to be able to deliver when you're losing light and when you can't go over because the bats have a special time that they have to be cut off, and it's, you know, like you have to really be able to hold your own and know that all of the work is already done. That's another very long answer.
No, it was great. I mean, I know some people have been in class with me and I've talked to Mark about this, but I'm also dyslexic. So it was really great to hear another person kind of tell your prep, because you kind of hear the same things over, but that was awesome to share about that uniqueness of how you prep. So thank you. I mean, I wasn't even expecting that, but that was great insight to get.
I just honestly, because I struggled for so many years just thinking that I couldn't do it and I wasn't going to get it learned or prepped fast enough, and I found it, and I couldn't work out how like people were just like, it was so easy, and I was like, it's taking me days even to get the lines in my head. And yeah, so I know a lot of people who are like it, and I'm like, yeah, and it's the same with self-tapes. Like when my agent will ring me up and say, and the deadline is 2 days away and it's 11 pages of text, I go, well, I won't be able to do that, so I will get it to you as quickly as I possibly can, and I will work on as hard on it as I can until then, but I need a bit of time, and that's okay.
Awesome, thank you. I'm gonna pass you to Heather now.
Well, I am totally impressed, I'm sure everybody else is, that you had such little forewarning on the Spanish princess the first season, because I think you did a phenomenal job portraying her. Just her vulnerabilities came through, as well as like the strength of her as the season progressed, as well into season 2. So I wanted to ask you, how do you feel working on a female-centered production? Because I believe 3 out of the 4 directors were women. Do you feel that kind of environment helped you bring out her strength in a way that maybe wouldn't have been possible if it was a more male dominant set?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, to be honest. What I do know is that on the first season of Spanish Princess, I had a completely brilliant Danish director called Birgitte Stermus, who prepped the whole thing, really the whole 2 seasons with me. She only did the first episode. She was a phenomenal director, and she really took the time. Like, she and I would sit every Sunday and we would have lunch together and we would just break down the script and just talk it through. And she was really instrumental for me in that whole process. And then we worked together again. So I know specifically she was great. And to be honest, a lot of our directors who were women on that show were amazing. I find it really difficult to be able to talk in generalizations about gender. Like, I think, yes, probably it really helped to have a show that is about female perspective being told through women. But also, like, I also worked really closely with Rory on that show, and like Mark worked on that show, and I've learned a lot from working with like all of the men on that show as well. So it would feel kind of reductive for me to be like, oh no, it was like, I think it was really it was really helpful and it was really refreshing, and I felt really empowered. And there was an element of it, I guess, where, like, I think especially on the first season, me and Birgitte and Maya Zamojda, who was our DOP, we were all this was all a big opportunity for all of us. We kind of were like all women who had been tussling for a while to be like, give me my shot, give me my shot, give me my shot. And like, luckily we all got our shot. And there was a camaraderie in that, because there would be points where like it would get really late on a Friday and Maya and I would just see like clock eyes and be like, I gotcha. But again, is that to do with gender, or is it just to do with like finding like-minded people and working together and respecting each other? I don't know is the answer.
Well, on the slight subject of a female-led production or something, when you first picked up that script and you saw that literally the first episode is your mum and she's on horseback and she's wearing armor and she's a strong warrior, she goes in there and she kicks ass with a sword, like she's like kicking ass and taking names. Did you get that, and were you super excited about such strong female characters? But also on the other side, how do you ride the line between showing a strong female character and then also being likable and the vulnerability? Because history does show that women who are strong female leaders, men don't like it. So, you know, they're labeled bitches and it's harder for the audience to empathize with them because they just get a bad rep. So how did you manage to find that sort of strength, but then also the vulnerability? And you know what I'm asking.
Yeah, to be honest, I never really thought of it as a strong female lead. I never thought I had to go and be really fierce and inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
So I just laugh. I'm such a fragile, tiny person that even when I say the words, but I'm like, was I strong? I'm like, no, fuck girl, you are strong. Of course not. Anyway, I'm cracking myself up. I apologize. What was my point? Yeah, it kind of happened that Catherine was strong. It also happened at times she was really fragile. And it also happened at times that she was kind of fucking annoying and entitled and a bit pretentious. And I think when I was really aware of the likable thing, because I kind of come and go as an actor, whether I think it's important to be likable or not.
Mm-hmm.
I think like it was really important in the first season of Spanish Princess that it didn't matter that she was a bit annoying, yeah, and that she was a bit cold, and that we weren't afraid to show that. I don't think that means she's not likable. Mm-hmm. And I guess sometimes I was questioning, well, I went through a kind of a phase with it where I was like, doesn't matter if she's not likable, but actually like I like loads of people who are bitches sometimes, or yeah, mean, or have breakdowns, or like take their emotions out on their friends. Like,
yeah, makes her a more relatable character.
Yeah, you know, I kind of just tried not to think about that too much and just try more and focus on like, can I create someone who feels real and who feels true, and like, yeah, I'm multi-layered, and then the rest of it isn't. I just tried not to worry about too much.
Yeah.
So just to change gears slightly here, when you had so many different scenes with different partners and characters on there, or very intense scenes, did you, to kind of keep your stamina going for that day, did you ask for your close-ups first to get those kind of out of the way, or did you have much say? It was just kind of like how it was written of the day. How did you kind of handle those?
Yeah, I find this stuff so interesting because I've also kind of watched it when I've been watching how other people operate. I usually asked all the time if I could go last. That was my kind of like standard, just because I usually, as an actor, tend to be pretty good at the beginning, really shit in the middle, and then by the end of the process, I usually have kind of come back to working out, you know, because it's the same as sometimes when you do a take. Like the first take, you have all of that kind of like, it's very real and very reactive and shocking and new, and newness is really the thing that like the camera loves. So sometimes the first take I'm like, but it was messy and kind of patchy, and it's not the take you want to print, it's just some cool stuff happened in it. And then by the second and third take, I've kind of usually lost it, and then I'm trying to rehash something I thought was good before, and in doing so I've made a total pile of shit. And then by the end of the filming process, I try and remedy it a bit. So if I ever get a choice, I will ask, and it's, to be honest, it's usually a conversation that happens with the director and the DP, especially if you're in a lot, it will happen quite early on. They'll say, what is your preference? Like, would you prefer to go first? Would you prefer to go last? And sometimes, you know, if someone's got more dialogue in a scene and they're a bit shaky on it, then they go last, because that's going to benefit the scene better. And you need to make sure that everyone's getting the best chance they can to do their best work, because that's only going to benefit you and the whole thing. On emotional stuff, I like to go first, just because I use up my tears, and I also get a bit indulgent if I do it too much. So just trying to limit my options to put too much tears on everything. But I think it really varies. There are some actors who like that kind of like the newness, and it just, and sometimes it really works, and it really kind of varies, and you kind of figure out the style that suits, because it's partly it's the style that suits you, but you are all working as a team, and so sometimes it's not possible for you to go last if that's the way that the lights are set up. And if you get too in your head about, oh, I'm not ready yet, then you're going to do yourself a disservice, because like filming isn't it's a technical thing, and I wish, like, sometimes I'll do scenes, I always feel so much freer on the wide because I haven't got a camera in my face. But you do the wide and it feels free and amazing. And then it comes to my close-up, and so many times, like on Spanish Princess, or really like most jobs, like I'll do a close-up and I'm doing it to a point on the camera because we want a shot that's like got my whole face and hasn't got anything going off. But I was doing a scene where me and Rory were having this moment and it was real and we were talking to each other, and now I'm doing it to a point on the screen. So I've also got to be able to, and that's the close-up, so that's where you're going to see all my stuff. So I have to be able to bring it here as much as I could try and bring it here. So yeah.
Thank you.
So shooting Spanish Princess, it was months and months of filming, and like you had mentioned before, you really took that character through highs and lows, like this ride, and you didn't just let it go down one trajectory. How did you prevent yourself from, I guess, burning out or just being so emotionally drained? Because when you watch the Spanish Princess, it's like you fully embody her, just your body movements, the way you tense your hands and your shoulders. How did you keep from, I guess, feeling the weight of Spain on your actual shoulders for that length of time?
Well, I didn't really. It's the honest truth of it.
Woo!
Took a bit of a toll, I'm not gonna lie. My mum's not watched the second series. She said it was too traumatic for her to watch as a mother. No, it was, look, the second season was pretty intense. I think Catherine, in that second season, she lost her 6-month-old baby. She had a miscarriage, stillbirth, miscarriage, divorce. And we did 6 months over the winter. It was quite hard going. I was incredibly lucky to be doing it with my boyfriend. And also to have had a really, really amazing group of friends that had been through the first season with me and who knew me and who knew how to look, like, to just keep, just not look after me, but just like, I had a lot of people looking, like, watching out for my back. What doesn't make sense, does it? You know what I mean. But it took a toll. I got really I became the route to crying just got very, very quick for me. It got to a point where I had spent so much time trying to conjure emotion and pushed myself off the edge, that it got to a point where basically if I had any sad thought, I would break down. And that was okay. Like, at the time, I kind of thought it was a bit of a superpower, and I was like, wow, God, I'm just so accessible. And I'd done a lot of, like, I worked with a really amazing acting coach who had worked a lot on like personalization, and we'd done a lot of like really trying to kind of link Catherine's trauma to my real life, which was really, really effective as an acting tool. If you do it for 6 months, like, it will fuck you up. Just a warning. I had a really great therapist, and also the pandemic happened, and so I like really, really got a chance to to process and unwind and get it all out my hair. But it was a bit tough. Like, I think there are some actors who can just drop in and drop out of that stuff, and I wasn't one of them. I've done other traumatic jobs. Like, I'd done a job of the summer before on The English Game where I also had a miscarriage, but it was just one miscarriage. It was 6 episodes. I got to. There's something about the relentlessness of doing it all the time that does take a toll. And I'm, to be honest, always a bit nervous to talk about it because I'm like, I go to work every day and I'm always going to work really, really hard, and I'm going to show up and I'm going to give you my best and I'm going to show how determined you are, and you're never going to be disappointed because I'm just going to try so hard. That's always my mantra. And so I'm always a bit nervous to be like, oh, I struggled a bit actually, and I found that a bit hard. But it's a thing that people, I think, because we, because also, like, I don't know, and I think it's just something that is probably worth saying. If you're going to do a really big emotional role, just be prepared that it probably is going to take a bit of a toll, even just on your body. Like, your body goes through that stuff and it doesn't know that it's not real, and just to be a bit kind to yourself if you're going to do it.
And thank you for sharing that it was, difficult for you, because I think, when you see your performance on the Spanish Princess, it just seems so natural, where to know that you struggled with some of those scenes and emotions. I think it's beneficial for other actors to know that's part of the normal process.
I think so.
Yeah, Heather said, it's really important for especially up and coming people to know that you don't always have to be the person that's going into work and trying the hardest and absolutely letting everything roll off your back. You can crack, you can find something, a struggle, you can ask for help, you can get a therapist, and I think people almost feel that if they're going to be privileged enough and lucky enough to get a lead in a role, they've got to crack on with it no matter what. And as you said, that can be incredibly damaging to your psyche, to your mental health. So thank you very much for opening up and talking about that. That's super important. And also on the same vein as young women potentially going into this industry, so you had quite a few intimate scenes to film. Is there any advice that you can give anybody coming up? Because I'm not young, so I wouldn't know, but I feel that there's younger, more vulnerable people coming into the industry and maybe are asked to do such roles, and what can they ask for? What are they just meant to crack on with it, or can they put lines in place? Can they put boundaries in place? What can they do to make themselves feel safe, especially in this day and age? It's obviously very important to make sure you have a safe working environment, but you've been there, you've done that. Is there any sort of advice you can give on that sort of filming?
Yeah, I think the most important advice that I would give about that stuff is to know we are working at the moment in an environment where people are listening and are sensitive. If you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to do anything you don't want to, especially with intimacy stuff. The power is really yours. If you don't feel comfortable doing something, don't do it. It won't read on screen. I've always thought of, like, I come from physical theatre, really. I went to mime school and stuff, so I've always kind of been more of a body actor, I think, in at least the way I approach stuff. And I'm really lucky. I really love my body, and I've had a really, really healthy relationship with my body. So I've never felt pressured or uncomfortable or anything. But I also do know that if you don't feel comfortable in a scene, and your body is your instrument, and your body doesn't feel comfortable, you're not gonna you're not going to be able to do a good performance, because you're not going to be comfortable, unless you're going to play someone who's doing an intimate scene and having a really uncomfortable experience about it. But even then, you're still going to cost yourself mentally. Like, you might be able to do a good performance, but you're going to wreck yourself in doing it if it's not something that you want to do. And I think the thing is at the moment is that I've got loads of friends, female friends, who don't do nudity and who don't do intimate scenes. And they work all the time. Like, if you're good enough to be, or not good enough, if you're lucky enough, whatever it is, your parameters, if you're working hard enough to be booking jobs that require nudity, you're also working hard enough, good enough, lucky enough to be booking jobs that don't. and you just don't have to do it if you don't want to do it. And if you do want to do it, then great, and there's like no shame in that as well. But you don't. I really would hate the thought that somebody felt like they were being pressurized into doing something they didn't want to do. And sometimes people will try and I heard like stories really like 10 years ago when I was starting out of like, you know, directors who would just be like, oh, should we just do one take? And it got kind of like slyly snuck in. And I have never experienced anything like that. And I know that it is getting better now, but like that the real role of the intimacy coordinator is to be a mediator. Because it is scary if you have to, you know, if it's a director you're a bit scared of and you're a bit scared of the producers and you thought you were comfortable with something and actually you get to the day and you turn out that it's not. And that happens. That's okay. That totally happens. That's why you have a third party there, because you can go to the intimacy coordinator and she's not going to fire you or be mad at you or replace you or lessen your part. She or they or he are just going to say, okay, you don't feel comfortable like that, so let's find a way to do it that doesn't involve doing that. And then go to the director and the producer and be like, okay, so we've figured out a way that we can do it that is going to make this artist feel uncomfortable and is also going to result in the thing that you want from the show. And you don't have to be involved. You just spoke to the intimacy coordinator. You don't have to be like, because I you know, it is the same thing of like I hate asking a question or raising a fear or whatever it is. But that's why you have I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but like you have someone that's there, that's on your side, that is only concerned with your well-being and you being okay. Because so often with film and TV, like there are so many other factors that are going to take precedence first, and often it's the schedule. And just to have someone whose only responsibility is just making sure that you're okay, indulge in that, because it's such a blessing that we get to have that.
Will every set have an intimacy coordinator, or do you have to ask for it? Is it quite standard in the industry now?
From my perspective, it's becoming more standard. Anything in the last 2 years, anything that I've worked on that has had any kind of either nudity or intimacy scene has had a intimacy coordinator, and some of those have been big production and some of those have been smaller ones. Mm-hmm. So I also think if you get on a set and you don't feel comfortable, you can just ask for it. The worst they can say is we can't afford it. Like, but you can ask and they can say no, or they can say, oh, actually, yeah, I think that's a really good idea. And 9 out of 10 times, I think
we got you. Thank you.
So you were talking about like, you know, lucky enough to work or kind of grinding and doing that work. A lot of people forget there is wait times between seasons and things like that. So how do you personally go about navigating that downtime? Do you look for other jobs? Are you like trying to just give yourself a break between filming and contractual stuff? Like, how do you navigate those waters?
Yeah, I mean, there are some people who, when they're working, they just want to be focused on what they're working. I'm a hustler, firstly. I love the hustle. I also, to be honest, if I don't audition for the last 3 months of the job, I know that I'm not going to have something lined up, and I like to work. And if I can, and I have the time and I have the patience and I have someone who will do audition tapes with me, mostly my very patient boyfriend, then I will usually audition as much as I possibly can, as even when I'm working. It gets a bit tricky sometimes, because especially when you sign on to, like, when I signed on to Spanish Princess, I signed exclusivity as well as an option. So that you can get a little bit bound. Like, I remember when I got, so in the in-between seasons between Spanish Princess 1 and 2, I did actually really luckily managed to do a couple of jobs. So one of them I nearly didn't get to do because I had a press engagement, and it was this job with this director who I'd worked with before, and it was a 6-part miniseries for Netflix, and I really liked the character, and I was so obsessed with it. I really wanted to do it, and I was about this close to not doing it because I had a press engagement. And I remember thinking that if I didn't get to do that job, it would be the end of the world, because I wouldn't be able to work for 3 months before the next season of Spanish Princess. And what would I do with that time? And like, I can't miss a whole job just because one pressing. I really went around the houses with this. And the thing I really learned is if you are lucky enough to be restricted from working because you have another job, that's a fucking great position to be in. You know, and if the worst case scenario is that maybe you're going to get your hands tied and you're not going to be able to work for 3 months, in the grand scheme of what's happened in the last 2 years, it's fine. And actually, like, that's the thing I've really learned in the last year and a half, because I think I probably had about 4 years where I worked pretty nonstop. 6 years prior to that, I worked very, 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 very sporadically and very patchily, and I didn't get like Spanish Princess until I was like 26. It was a late, maybe I was 25. I can't remember. Anyway, it felt like it had been a long time coming. And I was so desperate to be like working. And it was how I like really valued myself and all my self-worth and everything. And then when I got to the pandemic, and I had a really, really, really tough 2 years. We stopped filming on March 11th, and then I didn't work again until June of 2021, when I did a film. And then I've just done another film, and now things are starting to pick up again, thankfully. But I didn't work for 15 months, and I was okay. And I didn't think I would have been okay. I thought, I'm a worker bee. I have to work. I have to work. And I learned that there were some other good things in life. And I learned that, like, I'm still an actor because I'm still making audition tapes. And I remember when I like first started acting, when I wasn't working very much, I used to really be like, my job is auditioning, and any jobs I get are a bonus on top of that. But that's my like day in, day out, the work that I do is going to be in auditions. And to be honest, the way I was working those days was like, you know, a couple of days here, a couple of days there. So it felt like bonus to the actual work, which was mostly sitting in this house with like one of my best friends, and we just used to drill each other on lines all day, every day. And unfortunately now she's very successful, so she doesn't have to do tapes anymore. I have to do tapes. So I still am mostly drilling lines, working on scenes and making tapes. And that's my job. And sometimes I get to go to work, and that's really, really fun. But most of what I do to keep me sane is I do my tapes. I work really, really hard on them. I do my absolute best. I never expect to get them, because I now, since the beginning of the pandemic, have done 94 probably. And I've booked one. Maybe this isn't a very like encouraging talk, but I just mean that like that's okay, because I really, really enjoyed doing every 94 tapes, and I've got a lot better as an actor, and I've studied and I've worked out what works in my tapes and what doesn't work in my tapes, and that's been really, really rewarding. And sure, it hasn't meant that I haven't learned any money from it, but I've really grown, and maybe that's what's important. If I can, you know.
No, I think that is good to hear, though, because I think a lot of people would assume, well, she was on Spanish Princess, she probably books quite frequently, and it's probably easy for her. But it's really helpful, you know, to hear that. And that was one of the things I wanted to ask you. You had mentioned when you went through that long period of time, those 15 months without a job, you said you didn't think you would be okay with that, but it turned out you was okay. You were okay with it.
Yeah.
What advice would you have to maybe your younger self, or someone who is just starting out in this industry, or who is still working in this industry trying to book jobs? What kind of advice would you give them? Maybe something like that nugget of, you would be okay without work, because you can find yourself.
Yeah, like, because I do think it's I will also just say it, it always looks better from your career, always looks better from the outside. If you look at any actor, I'm always like, wow, they're working so much, wow, they're so amazing. If you talk to any of them, they will tell you it's never as glossy as it looks. That's the point of publicity. We're publicizing ourselves to make it look better. It's a mirage. But I will say that yeah, it's just that, like, I guess my real only advice is to know that you don't really have any control over it. All you can do is work as hard as you possibly can. The only thing you have control over is your craft, and you can, like, and work on that, like, because I do think it's also I don't think it helps when people say to actors, like, oh, it's all just luck, it's all just, you know, you have to get lucky. Like, there is an element of luck, but there is some stuff that you can control, and that is your stuff about what am I bringing, how can I make these tapes better, how can I make them more real, is eating a sandwich going to free me up and get me out of my head? Like, that stuff you can control, the rest of it you can't. And there's a kind of freedom in that once you make peace with it. Like, once I had stopped expecting to get jobs, I enjoyed making tapes way more, you know? And that's like, and I love making tapes. I get to create a little movie in my house, and I make up a scene and I play a character, and I don't know how long I get to play that character for. So I'm going to really fucking enjoy it whilst it lasts, because it's great. And also, you never know where it leads, because sometimes, like, so many times I'll do a tape for something and not hear back on anything, and then it will end up leading to another audition or another job because someone remembered me from then, and I was like, oh well, that was pointless, I didn't hear back on anything, I sent it to the ether and it doesn't matter. But it did matter. And so now I'm like, oh, I am actually really glad that I worked as hard as I possibly could have on that, because even though it didn't result in a job, it did result in my growth and also probably some other kind of opportunities.
Mm-hmm. So what I heard was cherish those self-tapes.
Say that again?
I said, so what I heard was cherish making those self-tapes.
Enjoy them, because you have to. If you make them into a chore, it will only make you miserable. It's just acting. Like, you just get to do a scene, and also you get to be completely in control of it. Like, most of the time on set, it's so in the hands of the director and then the editor and the lighting, and there's so much stuff even on set that's out of your control. And when you get to make a tape, it's just you get to give all of you, and that's such a cool opportunity where it's like, no, like, this is me, you can take it or leave it, but I put a stamp on something I'm really proud of, and now I'm going to walk away and do what you want with it.
That is the most amazing. Yeah, look at Mark's little thumbs. He bloody loves the self-tape, he does. That is just the most beautiful place to end it, really, because we're all so obsessed with self-tapes, and that's just such a lovely view to look at them. That's just such a nice positive spin to look at it, put it into the ether. It's something that you've done, you're proud of it, take it or leave it. That's wonderful. We will pass you to Mark in a second, because I know he's the guy with the questions. He loves a question, but we have one last question we like to ask all our guests. It's completely off topic, but realistically, how long do you think you'd survive in a zombie apocalypse?
Oh, no time at all. None. I'm like really blind, so if I lost my glasses, I wouldn't be able to see, and then I'd be immediately dead. I can't walk in a straight line. So once I was blind, something would eat me and I wouldn't notice, because I would probably be asleep. Not in no time. I would sacrifice myself just
okay.
Someone having to see that.
So you can be on team sucks with Mark then, because he wouldn't last very long either. So there you go.
So Charlotte tries to join your team, be like, I think we're full.
Thank you so much. You've been an absolute fucking delight. You've been amazing, fabulous. Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.